Hey, what's happening, everyone? Christopher Owens here. Today I'm going to go over multi-core staggered fuse claptons. Um, on its face, this build seems like it would be really simple to pull off. It's not. It has a lot of different little qualities to it that make it difficult if you don't get everything right at the same time. Um, Oddly enough, people tend to start with like the fewest cores to learn how to build. So they'll do a dual core SFC. That's where they'll start. Um, to my line of thinking, dual core staggered fuse claptons are harder to do than multi cores. I'm going to do a video about those as well. But today we're looking at multi-core. I'm going to do 5 cores. I usually use an odd number for my cores, and that's just because it sets up with the way I build. I use my center core as my swivel to swivel contact, and then the other 4 cores just kind of flop around. So I'm not really flop around, but you'll see what I mean. Unfortunately, in this video, I can't get real close up with the fusing part, but the things I'm going to show you about how to fuse, you don't need to be close up. The only reason you need to be close up is to see what you're doing. Me showing you that I can make a wire go through, a fuse wire go through staggers right, doesn't help you do it. You got to kind of figure out that part and get the feel of how you want to do it. But I'll give you a couple ideas that I use that made it easier for me. This particular build staggers both dual core and multi core has been kicked my ass for a year. Anyway, I would get lucky sometimes and they'd come out smooth, great. But other times, just the most frustrating thing in the world. And then everything fell into place. I took tips and tricks from everybody. Anytime I was on the page Coil Wars and I saw somebody say pro tip about a staggered fuse setup, I listened. I read that and I tried it. There's several different methods to stagger your frames or your cores. Dwayne Rambo Coil Wars, he's got a really great video. It's not the method I use. I never had very much luck with the method he uses, but it is a great method, and a lot of people use it and have become very successful with staggering using Dwayne Rambo's method. And of course, Ned Devine, N Devine 83, I think. He's really specific and really particular about builds, and does great videos for it. Me, I try and just keep everything as basic and simple as possible. So that's what we're going to do. I've already made 4 cores because I didn't want this video to take forever. So basically all I did is what I usually do. I just staggered a length of wire and folded it in half. There is some debate about folding staggers in half. Because the orientation of the staggers changes. So a lot of people will make sure that the orientation of their staggers is the same. So on this side of the stagger could possibly be doing this, meaning when I fold it over, it's on the opposite and doing this. That can make it a little more difficult to fuse, but I've tried it both ways. And it makes it so much easier to prep your build by cutting them or by folding them in half. So the benefits of having the orientation all going the same way aren't as great as the ease it is folding your cores in half to actually attach them to your drill and get ready to start fusing them. But try it both ways. See what you like. I never ever say my way is the best, the right, nothing. It's your way that matters. Take tips and tricks from as many sources as you can find. But definitely look for tips and tricks and videos. Building coils is a frustrating thing, especially this coil. And the more input you get, the easier it makes it. So look everywhere. Now, I made those cores up because I didn't want this video to go any longer than it absolutely has to, because I already know it's going to be a bit long, because I'm going to go over forced claptoning as a stagger method. Again, I already have a video out there about it, but I want to do it again so it's fresh in your head when you watch this video. I decided to go with 27 gauge cores. So I'm going to pull off a length of 27 gauge, stretch it, get it straight. You guys know the tools you need. Nylon pliers. These are pretty important for this. We'll go over why. As important as they are, I don't use them all that often because my metal ones, my toothless needle nose, they do a better job for me, but you got to be really careful, and I'll show you that when we get there. All right, so I'm just going to take my core wire and attach it to my drill side swivel. That should be good to see. Go ahead, cut a little shorter. You guys can't see this, but it's just me attaching the core wire to my swivel side swivel. Well, attempting to anyway. Okay, you should be able to see what I'm doing there. Again, however you make this portion happen, make it happen. Don't you hate those awkward silences? Okay, now for all my cores, my 5 cores, I wanted the staggers to be 38 gauge and I want the fuse to be 38 gauge. But I want the space between the staggers to be 36 gauge. Pretty simple to do with this forced claptoning method. You just start off with what you want your staggers to be, what gauge you want your staggers to be. Me, I want it to be 38. So I'm going to put my fuse wire through my drill side swivel, let it hang over a couple inches, and attach it. Now, when I folded my core wire into my drill side, I just folded it. I didn't put any glue. I didn't put wrap any wire by itself around it, because as I fuse, it's going to secure it to the swivel. Now, when I do for this forced claptoning, when I do my staggereds, the clapton part that I want to end up being my staggered core, I lead my fuse wire just a little bit towards the swivel side, so it staggers for about 5 or 6 wraps in the very beginning, and then I straighten it out and fuse it tight the rest of the way. The reason is I'm using, it just gives the spacing part of the fuse, the spacing wire, the 36 gauge I'm going to use, it gives it an easier start into going in between each stagger. Now I'm going to stagger this, and I'm going to stagger it for the amount I need for 1 coil, because when I put the spacer in, it's going to grow. So I'm only going to do 4 or 5 inches of this. This is going to end up being my center core of my 5 core staggered fuse clapton. So again, just hold it a bit and then straighten it out. Okay, that should do it. Now go ahead and cut this wire. I just cut the lead off of the core, right up flush to the core, and cut it. Won't need that for a minute. And I just check real quick. Usually it's released and loose, so you don't have to worry about it, but you want to make sure that it is. It makes this force claptoning part a lot easier and more consistent if this is flopping around, sliding back and forth. So basically it's just the same thing again. The thing that I find important about this force claptoning method is keeping your lead wire at 90 degrees to the core. Okay, now I'm going to leave a little tail on this because I'm pulling that wire right back out. Now, an important part of this that I didn't realize for quite some time when learning these staggered fuse claptons is that when the staggered fuse is on the core and you start wrapping a fuse wire into those staggers, that staggered fuse is going to grow. So you got to leave room at the end of your core wires for that expansion. You have to. If this end touches something and it stops, I promise you your staggering is going to get real bad real quick. And the thing that sucks is you'll get halfway through it before it hits something and stops, going nice and smooth, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, fuck, what happened there? Now it's a pain in the ass. My fuse wire is all diagonal. It's not lining up right. And it didn't. Once it dawned on me, I'm like, man, you're an idiot. You should have realized that. But these definitely have to be able to grow, because they do. Okay, so here's something else I missed when I was doing these. This part of your force clapping, that you want this to move too. This is just like a D-core. You want it to be able to move back and forth when it's parafused like this. So you got to release it, because if I just take my 36 gauge wire back out and this isn't released, it'll still be rigid. It'll still won't move, and that's not good. Huge thing. I can't stress it enough. Your staggers have to slide on your core. Have to, or you're gonna get frustrated. So I just back it up and do just like a regular D-core. So always check it in a couple spots, because if you're moving down here, that doesn't necessarily mean you're moving here close to your drill. So check it in a couple spots, make sure it's free completely. And again, when you're removing this 36 gauge stagger wire, you want to keep it to 90 degrees the best you can. Because if you move it, it can affect your staggers. And you don't want it affecting your staggers at all. I mean, the prep on these, think about it, for 5 cores, this is a lot of prep work. You don't want to screw it up because you're being lazy and not keeping your D-core or your lead wire at 90 degrees when you're removing it. Okay, so that's forced claptoning. Now, we're back to, we're going to go ahead and start building our 5-core multi-core SFCs. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to use 38 gauge wire to fuse. Now, the reason I used the 36 gauge to create the stagger and the 38 gauge fuse, it makes it a little bigger. It makes it a little easier to fuse. So when you're starting out with this, anything that can make it a little bit easier, do it. You can't really see the difference by the eye. Some of these guys, with the way they take pictures, you can tell there's a difference because they just get super up close. In any of my pictures, you can't tell that I've done it that way. But I just use a phone. But I also have evolved into using, if I'm fusing with 38, I use 38 to stagger, just to, as a, I don't know, probably the same reason I use a Lego to secure my cores for aliens at the drill side when they're already secure. I don't know. Okay, so I'm just gonna take my 38 gauge wire and I'm gonna pull out like a foot and leave it just laying here where I can grab it. Because now what I'm gonna do, and this is where folding the cores in half comes in to be useful. You just want them to be opened up a little bit at the ends too, so they're kind of straight. Now I'm just going to put the two together. Just put them together, and I'm going to take the open end and I'm going to put it towards my swivel and kind of get them on each side of the core. This can be a bit of a pain, but not really. They kind of want to go where they need to go. So now I have it crimped with my finger with all 5 cores lining up and they're nice and parallel. So I'm going to grab this wire, hold it a little bit between my middle finger and my index, and just wrap. Once I get a couple wraps on there, I'll grab my toothless and crimp it. And then continue wrapping until you think it's secure to your center core wire. There we go. Got tangled there a minute. Which, of course, that never happens to me when I'm building on my own. But once you put a camera on me, I get all twitchy. Okay, cut off the excess. Take your wire, because it despooled a little bit. It usually doesn't do that either, but because I'm videoing, get it so it's snug. Now, this is a build that you absolutely do not want to hold too much tension on your lead or fuse wire, because it'll just start crimping them. These builds twist and they want to collapse. You have to be patient and you have to stop it. I'm going to show you how to do that. First of all, I'm going to mechanically attach this core a little bit more, meaning I'm just going to wrap some more wire around it real quick. and crimp that there. Okay, so that's the basic setup. Let me see if I can get in a little bit close and show you. It's really hard to get in focus. That's the best I can do, guys. I've got stuff coming so I can make better videos, but that's the best I can do right there. Okay, so, man, this video is getting long. All you want to do now, I can't do these without magnification. So what I did is I bought some of those basically shades that have jeweler's loops, and they come with a bunch of different ones, a bunch of different magnifications. This is a 10 magnifier. The only reason there's only one on there is because if you put two, it separates your vision. It never focuses in like a binocular does. It just doesn't work. So I have to use one eye to do this. So now I'm going to get this started, and I'm going to fuse a little bit. And you want to do this on low speed. See, if you miss a stagger, you can just back up. So I get a few staggered in. You can see that my cores are kind of going all over the place, but when you pinch them with either your nylon pliers or your toothless metal pliers, it brings everything right back into line. So you can continue your fuse, which I'm going to do a little bit because I got one more thing to show you, and that'll be about it. Okay, something important to keep in mind with, even if you're using nylon pliers or the toothless, you want to keep your wire in line with where the mouth of your pliers is going to crimp. You crimp and break your lead wire, and then you're screwed, especially if you're 2/3 of the way through. Or it will bend your lead wire if it's not in the right spot, and it'll just look like crap in your staggers. Okay, so right now, the 4 cores that that I had built before I started the video, they are bent in half. So as I'm staggering, these stagger wires, these staggered fuse wires, are steadily pushing towards that bend. So when I get 1/3 to maybe halfway through this fusing, it's going to get tight. It's going to get the orientation's all going to change because the wire has nowhere to go. So get your cores attached to your core wire, your single core wire. Get to a point where you're fusing decently, not too far, and cut the ends. And there you go. The wire's got plenty of room to move. Now, if you get to a point where you're fusing, and it's starting to mess up on you, you're having to angle your lead wire to get into all the staggers. check your ends of your cores, of your freed cores, and make sure they're coming off. Make sure they're moving. Sometimes the cut isn't clean and it stops. The same reason we have problems pulling D cores off a wire for aliens. Sometimes the cut isn't real good and it stops them. So just make sure everything's moving okay. That's pretty much it. Right now, I can't really teach you how to look and watch how everything fuses together. Once I get a better camera system, I'll revisit this and you can see what I'm doing fusing. But that's the basic setup idea. There's really nothing more than wire here used to keep everything in line. The forced claptoning method is amazing. If you can, there's also a parafusing method that you can look up, which is claptoning 2 wires at the same time and then removing one. That's a little trickier. And the easiest probably is to buy this wire. It's called paracord. I have heard of it. I've seen it. I have no idea where to get it. But that's it for the multi-cores. Next I'm going to do a dual core because there's definitely different aspects to that. Hey, I hope you appreciate it. I hope you liked it. Got any questions, comments, anything? Leave them in the comment section. If you need to get a hold of me, DM me, Christopher Ohms at Christopher the K on Facebook. Just DM me. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Peace. Talk to you later.